Hey everyone, Ashley Mailloux here. We're going to take a look at a stakes race this Saturday at Santa Anita. It's the restricted stake, the Wishing Well. It's $100,000 for fillies and mares, a 4-year-old and upward, 6.5 furlongs on the downhill. And that restriction for this race, it's specifically for horses that have not won a graded stakes race since August 2022, August 1st to be more specific. And we'll take a look at the field of 9 runners. Actually, this is an interesting betting race to kind of navigate through. Looking at the odds, I handicapped the race without the morning line. I think to me, the main 3 players were the 4 Baystorm, the 5 Eddie's New Dream, and the 6 Big Summer. So it's not really surprised to see where they fall on the morning line. But in the case of Baystorm, this is a horse that's going to be cutting back in distance, and a couple other runners in here have some really solid experience on the downhill at that 6.5 furlong distance. So we'll kick off the field with the number 1, Stella Noir, who's 6-1 on the morning line out of the Keith DeSormo barn. Was a winner last time out. It seemed like the freshening really helped her kind of move up. She didn't show too much 2 starts back, and that was 6.5 furlongs. But last time out, she got a nice position mid-pack in that race, was able to draw clear. And now she does have a nice record on the downhill. I just wonder, looking at her getting back up to a stakes level, in the past, she hasn't fared too well. So for me, I look in other directions. But the number 2, Lady J, is next in the field. She finished second last time out in a grade 3, and we're going to show the replay for the La Ciennes for a couple of reasons. I thought it was a good run from Lady J, but it's a key race because several runners in the field raced in this race. We pick it up here from the turn and that crossover to the dirt, back onto the turf. Horses to point out in here, the Lady J is the number 4, the 2 is Freedom Flyer, and the 8, Countessa Rosina, who's all back in this field once again in the Wishing Well. And I think in terms of trips, when you see this, you can see Freedom Flyers kind of close to the front end. The 8, Countess Rosina, had that outside and really lost some ground and had to swing out. And Lady J had to navigate through some traffic here and split horses. I thought pretty game. And when it comes to the final jumps to the wire, it's truly hard to kind of separate these 3 runners, in my opinion, in terms of their performance. Very different trips. I thought Lady J and Countess Rosina, I was a little bit more impressed with because I thought they both had their fair share of problems. Now, looking at her down the page, she's at the board in both of her starts over the Santa Anita turf course, and I remember seeing her at Gulfstream Park, pretty competitive type, and I think, they've tried some different things with her. I think you can draw a line through the race 2 starts back. I don't think she wanted any part of that distance. And her two sprints at Santa Anita and just sprinting in general on the grass, they've been really strong. So I think she's maybe a horse to use in the exotics at least. We'll move on to the number 3, Founders Day, out of the Bob Hess Jr. barn. Was 4th last time out on the downhill, and I was going to step up and try to stake back in September, but that was at Losel on the dirt, a completely different beast. And she does have 1 win locally. I just think, looking at her, I'm not sure in terms of what she's facing. Again, I think the waters are too deep for her. She's one that kind of gets a mid-pack position, or at least in her experience at the Santa Anita turf course, and just doesn't have enough to get it done in the end. Edwin Molinado has the call. The 4, Baystorm, we're going to take a look at her most recent outing, which is in the grade 3 megahertz. And we look at this replay. Her last 2 efforts have both been at that flat mile, one of which was at Gulfstream Park. They shipped her out to Santa Anita for this race, which I remember talking about this race. I thought it was quite interesting. And as expected, she was forwardly placed. She had the inside draw in terms of post position. She went to the front, and she just could not hold on, I should say, in the end. Quattrell was much the best in the end and got a nice closing kick and scored a bit of an upset. I just think the key thing with her is they sent her out for that race. They've had her going long, and with her being a 5-year-old mare, sometimes you try different things. When horses get older, you think that they're what they prefer has changed, and they're going to cut her back in distance. And go to her last 3 sprint outings, Kentucky Downs, Monmouth, and Belmont, and she's just there every time. She had 2 wins in those races. She was beaten by a nose 3 starts back in a grade 3. I just really like the cutback, and maybe that was the plan with her, 3rd off the layoff to cut her back in distance. I just think this kind of race is going to set up for her. She's got that early speed. I think we're going to see a big run from the number 4, Baystorm, 3-1 on the morning line. To her outside is the number 5, Eddie's New Dream. Was 2nd last time out behind Big Summer. We're going to take a look at that replay. That was in the Sunshine Millions Billion Mare Turf Sprint at base distance at Santa Anita Park. And looking at the performance from her, She's an interesting type. Early on, she had a couple horses beaten in the race, and you can see the one Big Summer. It just seems like this horse is, getting called upon and has a ton of run. And Eddie's New Dream is a hard knocking type who really has to kind of work for it, is getting pressure from that horse to her outside. And she's really game in here. I think she's not necessarily the prettiest of movers when you watch the way she goes at it, but she kind of slugs it out to the end. And I really respect mares and just horses in general like that. And she does have a little bit of a good race bad race syndrome, as I would say. But the big thing is when you look at her poor outings, say 2 and 4 starts back, they were going longer. So I think she's really suited for these sprint distances. And in terms of position, I think she's going to be close to the pace. I do think obviously the horse to her inside is going to be part of that pace scenario, but I think Eddie's New Dream should get a good trip just off of it. Now, we mentioned in that replay the winner was Big Summer. We're going to talk about Big Summer next, who is a horse that really has done nothing wrong in her career. I mean, you look at her record, she's 11 for 11 in the money, a 5-year-old mare who's got 4 wins on her resume. And she's been an interesting type to follow because you can go down the past performances since they're all right there. And as I mentioned, she's consistent. But the thing I like about her is she's been closer to the pace. She's been further back. So I think Joe Bravo, who's been aboard her for her last several outings, has some options with her, depending what the connections think the pace scenario will be in this turf sprint. I think they, can kind of navigate a good trip for her. And it seems with her, she's been able to run on everything. So really nice horse. I think we all wish that we could own a horse like that. Now, number 7, Countess Rosina. We showed that replay when she finished 4th in that grade 3 event against Lady J in Freedom Flyer. I think the big thing is if you looked at the trip that she kind of got hung out there in that turn and lost ground. You could see that when they went from the turf to the dirt on that crossover. And I think when I looked at those performances, I thought she was sneaky. Prior to that, she had a nice win going 5 ace at Del Mar and then went back to that 6.5 furlong distance. I just liked how she ran. I think she'll need at least a ground saving trip or a little bit. She does have post position 7. I would hate to see that same thing happen to her, but I think Hector Barrios, Jeff Mullins, they're going to be very conscientious of that. And hopefully she'll get a better trip in this spot. The number 8, Freedom Flyer, was part of that pace scenario in that race that we keep on talking about on January 2nd. I thought it was a good performance. Frankie Dettori was aboard for that outing, stays aboard. She's going to be making her second start off the layoff. And looking at her, another one that I think her and Eddie's New Dream going to be quite close to that pace early on. I just looked at her last time out and I thought she hung a little bit in that race and needed more. So I do have a couple reservations about her. And then rounding out the field on the outside is the number 9, Aqua Seaform Shame. This one disappointed last time out. It was her first start in a couple months. Prior to that, she was 5th in the SK Maddie. She was part of the pace scenario. She tired in there. They're going to keep her kind of in the 6.5 furlong distance, and she could certainly improve second time off the layoff. I just looked down the page and I have questions about her form. She just doesn't seem like she's a horse that likes to win a lot, and it's been a while. She only had 2 starts back in 2022, so it was a light campaign for her, and I'm just wondering if she was better when she was a younger horse and just maybe not as competitive at this sort of stakes level. So that's the field for the Wishing Well. I think I kind of sold my case on who I'm going to go with in here. I did land on the number 4, Baystorm. I just mentioned I really think this horse, those 2 outings at a mile, they were both good efforts, but I really like this horse third start off that bit of a freshening, cutting back to 6.5. I do think she's going to be extremely tough in here. A lot of confidence with the connections shipping last time to Santa Anita Park and keeping her out here for that event. And then from there, I thought it was a little bit of a wide open race. I ended up going to the 5, Eddie's New Dream as my second selection. I really liked what we saw last time out. I do know the number 6, Big Summer, who I used in the 3rd spot, did beat her last time out, but I thought Eddie's New Dream is a consistent type to use in the tickets. And then rounding out my top 4 selections, if I was playing the exotics, I think the 7, Countess Rosina, is certainly one to use. Assuming she can get a better trip, she's got a shot in here at a better price than the other runners that I mentioned. But for me, the number 4, Baystorm on top. Good luck this Saturday in the Wishing Well.